Hello, Flat Earth researchers, debaters and debunkers, and truth seekers in general. I wanted to talk about fear today, but also this video has the purpose of just seeing how long it takes to get dark after sunset, which is about now, officially. The cicadas just started up. That's one signal from nature. And the mosque is also signalling the time of sunset. This is all based on Earth time. You see the cicadas have just started up. What gave them the signal to do that? How do they know? Whose clock are they on? Are they on our 24-hour clock? Of course not. They're on nature's clock, Earth time. There we go. Every other creature on this plane is doing what it does, carrying out its purpose on this plane. Whether it does so with or without thought, we really cannot know. Whether it does so with emotions, we can postulate forever. But what is certain is that creatures, plants, trees, all the things that are part of nature, the animals, including us, if we allow ourselves, operate on a daily basis on a fundamental instinct of fear. Fear drives a simple decision: fight or flight. The fear is often instinctive. If you're faced with a tiger, you would instinctively feel scared, or a snake. But this is what drives decisions in nature on a moment-by-moment basis. Fear. And then the decision to fight or flight. Of course, when a creature is not doing that, when a creature is doing its thing, whether it's building a nest or singing or making a burrow, defecating, eating, it is playing its role, and as far as we can tell, doing it uncomplainingly. So, is a creature like an ant in a colony aware of its place in that colony and carry out its duties accordingly? Does it think outside of that? Can it? Surely there are times of rest and play for all creatures. And when we are not living by the fight or flight rules or instincts, then we have time to contemplate, to explore, to think about some of the more fundamental questions in life. Why are we here? Who are we? How did we get here? Where do we come from? Where are we? What made us? Why? What for? Why? But of course, an animal or human will make fight or flight decisions based on previous experiences that get logged in the brain or the mind as either things that are dangerous or things that can be overcome, overpowered. But it's, based on things that maybe hurt us in the past. So we develop instincts and reactions on top of the basic instinct of fear, the fight or flight decision. And so for each person, the raw instinct is always there, but the fight or flight reaction to it will always be different for the individual, based on what they've had to deal with in the past and what they've come through, what they've survived, what they accomplished, what they didn't accomplish, what fears they have either kept at bay or overcome. So of course we can look at an animal being afraid of something that maybe it was hurt by or when it was younger, and we will know that it's an unreasonable fear. Maybe a cat could be afraid of a red ball because it was hurt by a red ball when it was a kitten. And the cat will continue to be afraid of the red ball all its life. Or a red ball that looks similar, and will be very wary of it and have a belief that this ball or balls like that are out to do harm. So we've got a storm coming in. Ironic that I'm talking about balls, but that wasn't intentional. Just an example of how we can build up a set of beliefs that back up the fight or flight decisions that we make. Of course, when you're going to be in an accident or you have to avoid something to save your life or stop yourself from getting hurt, then that's a very, very, very basic reaction, a physical one. But of course we make decisions in our heads without actually doing anything physical a lot of the time, or certainly not outwardly displaying our decision-making process, but it's going on nonetheless. And so anytime any potential conflict arises, or a vulnerability, or a perceived weakness in ourselves, then we subconsciously, but maybe also consciously, make a fight or flight decision. So even to recognize this and then attempt to sensibly, coherently evaluate our own fight or flight decisions, we have to first recognize that this is how we operate. how everything operates. But we have the advantage of being able to establish a level of comfort and safety that allows us time to take a break from the fight or flight mode. But you have to make a conscious decision to do that, because in the mind, the fears are there. Just as we watch the cat that is afraid of the ball, we know from our external frame of reference that the cat has no reason to be afraid, but we also know that the cat has its own reasons for being afraid of another attack or being hurt. So these become mental walls built up in the mind with this acceptance that there is a thing called fear. Prowling about, ready to pounce on the ego, really. That sense of self, and of course the fear brings doubt to the ego, can dent the pride. So the ego is always on the defensive, and it's usually always in charge. And of course, it's directly connected to the fight or flight behavior, because it's about self-preservation. It's about staying alive, staying complete. Surviving to live another day in the world that we've become accustomed to. So, fight or flight occurs on a daily basis, a moment-by-moment basis in the animal kingdom and with us. But as humans, or people, entities perceiving our own reality with the ability to look at our own reality without having to be just like we look at the cat. When we start looking at ourselves like the person watching the cat, this is a step towards freedom. Freedom of the mind, freedom from fear. Freedom from the most basic survival instinct of fear. So, someone mentioned to me the other day the heliocentric lifestyle that we have all become accustomed to in this global way of life. A double-edged sword, really. We have progress, you can't stop progress. We are able to communicate in ways that we never could before, and that's obviously a positive thing. We get to see reflections of ourselves, we get to see a little bit more of an inside view on humanity, what it is like to be human, what it means to be human. But we are very lost and it's the ego that leads us astray. And of course, the people that understand how that works can be dominant in controlling even our very thoughts and of course our beliefs. So, finding out any kind of truth is never a nice feeling for the ego, maybe even for the soul, when you find out that Santa Claus doesn't exist. It's a bit of a letdown. And later on we find that people might not understand what we might have done in a certain situation or tried to accomplish. I'm straying from the point. So we can build our walls inside our mind and to keep fear at bay, to keep things that don't fit. With our persona. The contradictions, the conflicts. So there isn't inner conflict constantly going on between the ego and the natural instincts that are part of us mentally, physically, and spiritually. They're all three different, very different things, but they're all very much connected. So the mind and the ego are very much the same entity. And of course they are connected to the body to make the body do things, perform actions. And then the soul is there, experiencing it all, attached and with the ability to detach. Call it the Holy Trinity, if you like. Which is kind of like the soul is one part and the other parts are the polarity of this existence, the positive and negative, the yes, the no, the fight or flight, the binary code. At the root of all the programming of our minds and body. So when we don't really think about it or contemplate it, we are either the one or the zero in the binary system. We are the yes, the no. We are the positive or we are the negative. Or we're going somewhere between the two. And the soul, the spirit, can be drawn into all that and forget that it's got another place, and that is to look down on that yes-no process going on. So there's a purpose straight away, regardless of what you believe about the shape of the earth. The purpose, the name of the game, the rules. Well, the first thing to work out is this, there are 3 players in the game inside your body. The mind, the ego, the body itself, and your soul. So of course the emotions are attached to the ego and the mind, so that the ego is ruling over the mind and the emotions. So the mind is making decisions based on emotions, and ultimately the ego is overseeing these 2 subordinates. So of course then we have the very simple fact of life. Maybe one of the only facts that we can really be sure of, but ultimately cannot prove to anyone else unless they look for themselves, is that we are made up of these 3 parts. And only then can you start playing the game properly. Only when you understand that you've got these 3 pieces to move around can you start to actually participate in the game of life and have some kind of control over it. Well, no, control is the wrong word. Submission to it, I suppose. That the players will ultimately make their path across the game board, and the dice will be rolled again. I have a friend who, after working for a couple of years, bought a motorbike and went on what he calls dice travels. So his decision on where to go next for the major decisions are based on rolls of the dice with a few options. So of course, it all seems to be by chance. But how would we know that no matter what the roll of the dice, the player's path is already mapped out? Who knows? Just depends whether we take in the scenery on the way. Gecko. So people who are offended by truth seekers are really only showing their fear when they decide to fight it. If the flight decision kicks in, then you won't hear from them. So the fight decision, we know, is one based on survival, and that the ego is what is ultimately constantly working to, the ego is constantly working to defend itself from any, it is very much ruled by fear. But the ego can be tamed, the ego can be let go, diminished, reduced to nothing. So of course then the decisions you make in your life, the reactions you have, are then no longer based on fear. You've switched off the fear and you've gone into a direction that is governed now by the soul. It's a very powerful thing. The most important thing, perhaps, about us just being here, that we've got to work out. Well, it's pretty dark now. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.